When she stepped out of the limousine wearing my gown, the one I designed, the one I hid so no one could touch, I didn't get angry. I smiled, because that dress wasn't just fabric. It was a trap, stitched with secrets. And tonight, both she and my husband were going to walk right into it. The night of the Lancaster Gala shimmered like a movie premiere, diamond chandeliers, polished marble floors, and the hum of laughter soaked in champagne. Everyone who mattered in the city was there, investors, journalists, and the kind of people who smiled with their lips but not their eyes. I'd attended this event every year since I married Daniel Lancaster, the charismatic CEO who knew how to charm a room and destroy a heart, mine. For years, I played the perfect role, elegant, loyal, the woman who never faltered under the gaze of 100 cameras. I supported every deal, every project, every long night at the office. I thought we were a team. But teams don't hide interns in their offices with a bottle of wine. The first time I saw her, she was sitting on Daniel's desk. Her name was Lila. She was young, too young, with the kind of beauty that believed in shortcuts. Her laughter filled the room when I walked in unexpectedly. Daniel looked startled, like a guilty teenager caught mid-lie. "Oh, Anna," he said too quickly, "we were just celebrating her new role. She's been a huge help lately." Lila hopped down, smoothing her skirt, smiling nervously. "Mrs. Lancaster," she said, "it's such an honor to finally meet you." "Likewise," I'd replied smoothly, my voice calm even as my pulse burned in my throat. "Congratulations on the promotion." I left without another word. But something in her smile stayed with me, that faint arrogance that comes when someone thinks they've already won. A week later, my emerald gown disappeared. Not just any gown, the gown. The one Daniel had commissioned from Paris, custom fit, made for my birthday. The one I had kept sealed, unworn, waiting for a moment that truly mattered. I searched everywhere, but deep down, I didn't need to. I knew exactly who had it, and how it had gotten out of my closet. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't confront Daniel. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat by the window, and smiled. Because betrayal is loud only when you let it be. I preferred silence and strategy. So, I waited, I planned, and when the gala invitations went out, I made sure everything was perfect, down to the seating charts, the music, and the guest list. Daniel thought I was being generous by taking charge of the planning this year. He didn't realize I was building a stage. And tonight, the curtain would rise. When I arrived at the Grand Imperial Hall, I waited until the press had already surrounded the main entrance. I watched from my car as flashes of light captured the smiling faces of Daniel and his team. He looked confident, charming, his arm around Lila, his intern. And there she was. The crowd gasped at her entrance. Emerald silk, low neckline, silver straps that caught the light. My dress. She wore it proudly, as if she owned it. As if it hadn't been stolen from my closet, from my life. I stepped out of the car slowly, deliberately. My heels clicked against the marble walkway, and the sound drew eyes toward me like a command. The air shifted. Daniel turned. His smile froze. "Anna," he said, approaching me too fast, "I didn't think you'd make it." "Oh," I said softly, my lips curving into a small smile. "You didn't think I'd miss my own event, did you?" His eyes darted nervously to Lila, who stood behind him, clutching her clutch like a shield. She looked unsure, small under the weight of my gaze. "Lovely dress," I said, letting the words linger. She swallowed hard. Thank you, Mrs. Lancaster. "It's new, is it?" I tilted my head. "Looks familiar." Daniel cleared his throat. "We should head inside. The board is waiting." I smiled again. "After you." Inside, the hall glowed with golden light and whispered tension. Every eye followed us, the perfect triangle. The husband, the intern, and the wife who smiled too calmly. I could almost hear the whispers forming behind jeweled fans and champagne flutes. Daniel made his rounds, shaking hands, pretending everything was fine. Lila stuck close, playing the supportive assistant. I watched from a distance, taking mental notes, her stolen glances, his forced laughter, the faint touch of guilt that flickered in his eyes. But he didn't know I'd already rewritten the night's script. This wasn't his event anymore. It was mine. As the orchestra played a slow waltz, I made my way to the stage. The lights dimmed, and the hum of the crowd fell silent. I took the microphone, my emerald earrings glinting under the spotlight. "Good evening, everyone, I began, my tone calm, measured. Tonight is a celebration, not just of success, but of integrity. Of loyalty, of the values that hold a company, and a marriage, together. Laughter quieted. Daniel looked up sharply. Lila's hand trembled. For years, I continued, I believed success was built on trust. But recently, I've learned something new, that even the strongest foundations can crumble when cracks form from within. A murmur swept through the hall. Daniel shifted in his chair, his jaw tightening. I won't take much of your time, I said, smiling faintly. But before we continue the celebration, I'd like to share a short video. The massive LED screen behind me flickered to life. It showed Daniel's office, a grainy clip, recorded just a few weeks earlier. Lila laughing on his desk. Daniel leaning close, whispering something in her ear. Then, the unmistakable sound of a kiss. The audience gasped. Someone dropped their glass. Daniel shot up, his face pale. Turn that off, he barked. This is private. But no one moved. The video kept playing until I raised my hand. The screen went dark. I turned toward him slowly. Private, I asked. You brought her into your office. Into our company. Into our lives. His face flushed red. Lila sat frozen, her eyes filling with tears. You planned this, Daniel spat. I smiled softly. Of course I did. The crowd was silent, holding its breath. Effective immediately, I said clearly, I am withdrawing all my shares from Lancaster Enterprises. The board has already accepted my resignation as co-chair. But don't worry, Daniel, I didn't sell them to just anyone. I sold them to your competitor, Harris Industries. They'll take good care of what's left. Gasps, murmurs, shock. Daniel's mouth fell open. You can't be serious. I am, I said, my voice even. You built your empire on deception. I built mine on truth. Let's see which one lasts longer. I glanced at Lila one last time. She looked shattered, her dream, her image, everything crumbling before her eyes. Enjoy the dress, I said gently. It suits you, for tonight. And with that, I stepped off the stage. The applause didn't come, only silence, the kind that follows a storm. Cameras flashed as I walked out of the hall, my head high, my smile unbroken. Outside, the cold air hit my skin like freedom. For the first time in years, I felt light. Free, unburdened, because I hadn't lost anything that night. I had simply taken back what was always mine, my dignity, my power, my peace. And as the music swelled behind the closed doors of the gala, I whispered to myself. Let them dance. The show's over. When he knocked on my door months later, broken and trembling, I didn't feel hate, just a quiet, distant pity. Because the man standing before me wasn't my husband anymore. He was just a stranger who had finally tasted the cost of betraying the one person who built him. It had been 3 months since the gala, 3 months since the world watched Daniel Lancaster's empire crumble in front of flashing cameras and stunned faces. Overnight, the man who once commanded boardrooms was reduced to a name whispered in scandal. The video had gone viral. News channels replayed the clip, dissecting every expression, every word. Social media feasted on it, the faithful wife, the cheating husband, the ambitious intern. The internet made me a symbol before I even had time to breathe. I didn't seek fame, I sought peace. After the chaos, I disappeared from the city. I left behind the penthouse, the company, the gossip, everything. I bought a quiet villa by the coast, white walls, open windows, and the endless rhythm of the sea. I hadn't realized how much noise I'd been living in until silence became my daily companion. Mornings started with coffee on the balcony, sunlight kissing the horizon. I painted again, something I hadn't done since college. My hands, once used to signing contracts, now blended colors instead of arguments. I stopped checking the news. I stopped caring about the world's opinion. For once, I belonged only to myself. But peace has a way of being tested. One evening, while the sun bled into the ocean and the air smelled faintly of salt and jasmine, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart tightened. When I opened the door, there he was, Daniel. He looked nothing like the man who had stood beside me at galas, all confidence and charm. His suit was wrinkled, his hair grayer, his eyes hollow. He looked like a ghost still wearing human skin. Anna, he said softly, his voice trembling, please, don't close the door. I didn't, but I didn't move either. What are you doing here? I asked, my tone calm, cold, the same calm I'd practiced every time I used to forgive him. I had to see you, he whispered. Just once. To explain. I stepped aside slightly. 5 minutes. He entered the villa slowly, looking around like he didn't belong, and he didn't. He paused near a painting on the wall, one of mine. You're still painting, he said quietly. I started again, I corrected. He nodded, rubbing his hands together nervously. You look different. I am, I replied. He exhaled shakily. Everything fell apart, Anna. The company, the investors, the house was repossessed. Lila, she left. I said nothing. She took what she could, money, connections, and vanished. I deserved it, I know. He broke off, his voice cracking. I've lost everything. I watched him, the man who once commanded power now begging for understanding. But the strangest part was, I didn't feel satisfaction. Not even revenge. Just distance. You didn't lose everything, I said finally. You gave it away, piece by piece. Every time you lied, every time you thought I wouldn't notice, you handed away what mattered. He looked down, shame painting his face. You were right that night, he whispered. I was arrogant. I thought I was untouchable. I thought you'd always stay. I smiled faintly. You built your world on illusions, Daniel. I just turned the lights on. He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. You always had a way with words. I had to, I said softly. Because for years, you never listened. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I kept this, he said. It was supposed to be your anniversary gift. I bought it before everything went wrong. He opened it, revealing an emerald necklace, the same color as that cursed dress. The stone caught the dim light, glowing faintly between us. It's beautiful, I said quietly. He nodded. It belonged to my grandmother. She told me to give it to the woman I'd spend my life with. And you didn't, I said. He winced. I wanted to, but I got lost. There was silence. Only the sound of waves beyond the balcony filled the space between us. Finally, I asked, why are you really here, Daniel? He met my gaze, his eyes red. Because I can't live with what I did. Because I need you to know, I never stopped loving you. Not even when I was too stupid to show it. For a moment, his words trembled in the air, heavy and hollow. Once, they would have broken me. Now, they barely reached. You loved control, I said. You loved admiration. You loved the idea of a perfect life, not the person standing beside you in it. He tried to speak, but I stopped him. Daniel, I forgave you long before you came here. Not for you, for me, because hate is still a kind of chain, and I've lived with enough of those. Tears welled in his eyes. So this is it. This was it, I corrected softly. He nodded slowly, his shoulders sagging. I ruined everything, didn't I? I looked out toward the sea. No, you built exactly what you valued. It just couldn't stand. He closed the box and placed it on the table. Keep it, he murmured. Maybe you'll find someone who deserves to see it on you. I didn't answer. As he turned to leave, I said quietly, do you know why I smiled that night? He stopped, glancing back. At the gala, yes, he frowned. Because you wanted to humiliate me. I shook my head. No, Daniel, because that night wasn't about you. It was about me realizing I didn't need to be angry anymore. You can't betray someone who's already let go. His lips parted, but no words came. He just nodded once, slowly, then walked out into the dusk, a man smaller than his shadow. When the door closed behind him, I didn't cry. I didn't even sigh. I simply stood there for a long moment, looking at the box on the table. Then I opened the balcony doors and stepped outside. The sky was streaked with orange and pink. The wind tugged at my hair. I took the necklace, held it up to the light, and then set it gently on the balcony railing. It glimmered once before the tide of dusk swallowed its shine. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in years. Weeks later, I launched my own fashion line, Emerald Grace. The name came to me easily. It wasn't about the color. It was about resilience, about transforming something that once symbolized betrayal into strength. The first dress of the collection was a recreation of that gown, same emerald silk, but redesigned. Stronger, bolder, stitched with gold thread. Inside, the label read, "For women who rise after betrayal." The launch sold out in hours. Fashion magazines called it a statement of rebirth. I called it closure. Standing backstage that night, watching models glide down the runway wearing my designs, I thought of Daniel, somewhere out there, maybe watching, maybe not. But it didn't matter. His chapter in my life had ended long ago. Because I finally understood something simple but powerful. When someone betrays you, they think they've taken something from you. But in truth, they've only handed you the blueprint for your own strength. The dress they stole, you redesign it. The love they broke, you rebuild it in yourself. And when you rise, they'll recognize the glow, not as revenge, but as the peace they'll never find again. That was my victory. Quiet, complete, unshakable. And as the applause filled the room that night, I smiled. Because I wasn't just wearing success, I was wearing freedom.